Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Hi, and welcome to Reloscope, the Relationship Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm Marie Stella, your host from Melbourne, Australia. Let's start the show. Welcome back to Reloscope, the Relationship Science Insights podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about shared responsibility in relationships and how empowering each other can actually do so well for each other's personal growth. And to guide us through this conversation is marriage and family therapist Shira Etzion. Based in New York, she offers virtual therapy to her clients, affording everyone the opportunity to stay connected even through their busy schedules. Hi, Shira. How are you going today?
Hi, I'm great. This is my favorite topic ever.
That's great to hear. We'll get to chat a lot about it, so that's good for the both of us. Now, I'm really curious to know, in your line of work, what's the most common misconception that you've seen or heard, especially with regards to sharing responsibilities in relationships?
The greatest misconception that I hear both clients and therapists speak about is this idea of compromise. And even though compromise is, and the ability to compromise is a great skill, I find when couples feel like they are compromising, something is out of sync. And ideally, it should feel like a win-win. And usually that comes from deeply understanding your partner, understanding what we call in the Gottman method, at least your love map, and really understanding what makes your partner tick. And that creates the opportunity for you to want to do something that feels good to your partner, and it shifts it away from compromise to support.
Thinking that compromise is something that's essential in relationships, and even in my younger baby relationships, I remember using the term compromise a lot. So I'm really keen to hear what the alternative is meant to be and how we're meant to look at it. But before we get started, we'd really like to get to know you better. This is Have You Met Shira? And the first question I have for you is, what do you like to do in your spare time?
Well, right now I have a 2-year-old and a 23-year-old stepson who lives far away right now. And so this is definitely a lot of home creating, home building, time at home, family experiences, things that are appropriate for a 2-year-old. I am turning 43 and my husband and I have been together for 10 years. So we've had a lot of time to do a lot of things, and it's really, really fun to co-parent and do things together as a family. And as you know, we're renovating our house. We bought a house with the intention to renovate it while we're in it. So that definitely takes up most of our time.
That is so sweet. What is your favorite activity to do with your 2-year-old?
Oh my God. I mean, it changes like every month. I would say over the last 2 days, we started doing like airplane where I hold her on my feet and she flies. So I would say that's definitely her favorite right now.
Yeah.
And my favorite just because it's her favorite.
Yeah, that's adorable. I used to do something similar with my dad, which was the penguin one. I don't know if you've done the penguin one before, but
Oh, we
essentially,
stand on their feet.
I'm standing on his
Yeah.
feet, and
Yeah.
and we do the penguin walk. That's
Yeah.
adorable.
That's the
So,
best too.
I really want to know more about your recent home renovation. So, tell me how that's going.
It's amazing. I mean, I think, I think really today I just said to the house, okay, like you take over, like I surrender. It's really, really asking for a lot more walnut than I planned. And It's, we came to a house that was 20 years old, and it was designed kind of like a builder grade colonial, and we wanted to turn it into a modern craftsman home.
Mhm.
And so it's really redoing everything, all the trim, all the walls, all the floors. And we're doing the kitchen right now is what we're kind of mainly
Yeah.
stuck on. And it's taken on a life of its own. And it's really cool to see the
Yeah.
personality of the house emerge.
Yeah, it's really amazing to be and then you're at this point now, but then you reflect on when you started, and it's almost unrecognizable, and it's going to look even more unrecognizable in a few months or however long the project takes. But what room in your new home are you the most excited about?
I mean, right now I am really excited about the kitchen
Yeah,
as it's taking shape. Yeah. I think
yeah.
we just got our bar, like our counter chairs.
Mhm.
And so it's really become kind of like a center place.
Yeah.
And it wasn't before. It just the layout was not very intuitive.
Yeah, sometimes it just takes like one feature to pull the entire thing together. And I just find that incredible. And also the fact that I guess the kitchen is kind of, multi purpose. It's not just for cooking, it's for convening with your friends too, it's for eating. So it's really a special place in the home. But is there a particular feature in the kitchen that you're most looking forward to?
Our backsplash is amazing.
Oh,
And
what
that just
kind?
went in. So it's actually a floor tile.
Yeah.
Our
Wow.
contractor wanted to kill us. But I forgot the term, but it's basically, so it's like large black, or it's almost like a charcoal black hexagon with white flecks, but it's split up into like triangles, almost like a pizza pie. So every hexagon is in triangles. And then the grout color is like a gray. It's called silver. But then the black hexagon also has flecks of white everywhere, and it has a leathered finish. So that's it. That's that.
That sounds incredible, and like it's a feature wall on its own.
Yeah.
So that's a great choice. And I feel like your contractor might have been mad at you, but once he sees the finished job, he's going to be like, okay, I kind of understand.
Oh, he loved it. He took pictures and
Yeah.
everything. And yeah, he just said that the grout we chose ruins his tools, and the tile is a lot harder to put in on a wall because it's meant for the floor.
Yeah.
But yeah, he overall did a good job, and he's going to fix what is not good.
That's amazing. So I'm aware that you're a proud New Yorker. What are your favorite spots in New York?
Oh, wow. Well, actually, I lived in like right kind of bordering K-Town for a few years, the second to last place that I lived in New York City before we moved this or bought this house upstate. And I think I really, really, really like K-Town right now, food wise. So that's just, I don't know, that I would say that's my most recent new attraction in New York City. I really like
Yeah.
the High Line. I think that's just been an amazing contribution to the city. And let's see, what else is my favorite spot? I don't know. That's such a hard question for me right now because my brain is so not in New York City.
That's fair enough. But K Town sounds incredible. What other food options like there?
Well, it's a lot of Korean barbecue. K-Town, it stands for, like Koreatown, I guess.
Yeah.
But no one calls it anything other than K-Town. Um, there, there's just some amazing restaurants. One of my favorite is, God, I can't remember what it's called, which is so nuts. But you have to take your shoes off when you go in, and you're sitting, like the floor is sunken in under the tables. So you're sitting down with the floor sunken in, and it's vegetarian and it's just like the most amazing food ever. And I really wish I could eat that right now.
I'm sorry for reminding you of how good it is. And you're probably going to be thinking about that for a while.
Yeah, no,
But
this
thank
food thing is definitely, yeah, the food thing is, I think, really what we miss. And we go back, but we rented out our apartment, and our apartment is in Jackson Heights, Queens, which also has amazing food. So yeah, I think really when you're away from New York City, food is definitely a lot of what you miss.
it just sounds like, well, I feel like every person I've talked to who's from New York just it feels like there's so much good food in New York, like, and every
Yeah,
kind of
there is.
food too. It's just
Yeah.
so like so diverse. And oh, I also saw this deli slash grocer on the internet, just yesterday, I believe,
Okay.
where they have this little side thing where they do sandwiches, and because it's a grocer as well, you can pick up anything in the grocer and just toss it to them and they'll put it in your sandwich. And
That's awesome.
yeah, that looked incredible. I think someone put like salt and vinegar potato chips in their sandwich and it looked amazing. I know.
My brain didn't even go that far when you said you could put anything. That is really amazing. That is really cool.
Yeah, that is. So thank you so much for sharing with us about your home, your lovely family, and also a bit about New York. I had such a lovely time listening to it. But we'll move on to the interview section now and get down to business. And our first question for you is something that we like to ask all of our guests just to set the baseline for the rest of the conversation. The first question is, what is a relationship? How would you describe a relationship?
Can I actually go back to the New York conversation? Because I
Yes,
realized I'm
sure.
not speaking to like a New Yorker. So I realized when you said that I'm a proud New Yorker, you meant like New York State. And I think New York City, and we moved out of New York City. But really, you meant like New York in general. So I was answering about New York City because I thought that's what you were asking. But
No, but
yeah,
like New York City is in New York, so it's
yes.
part of.
Well, right. Well, we were in New York City. And so
Yeah.
we just moved upstate New York, which is totally different than New York City. So I'm still in New York, but I'm not in New York City. And yes, the food is different.
That's really interesting. How different is the food?
It's like completely
Like,
different reality.
what makes it different?
I guess the biggest way to summarize it is people's palates are different or less sophisticated maybe. And so everything up here has to have either like some sugar in it or is really bland.
Oh,
So yeah, it's unless it's like just regular American
right.
food, but any
Yeah.
sort of like ethnic food, it just they don't get it right. I mean, I'm pretty high upstate New York though,
Yeah.
so yeah. But
I
I
have
mean,
no idea.
it's
I have
beautiful.
no
So
yeah. I have no idea what I was expecting the answer to be, but that's not what I expected at all. But that's really interesting because, like, as someone who lives and has always lived so far from New York, and I've been to the States, but I only went for like 2 weeks, and it was in California, so it's not like it was anywhere near New York.
what were you doing there?
Yeah, it's just on a vacation. I was just going around San Francisco. The Bay Area is lovely. I love the touristy trams there. That's really fun. Don't love the hills. Don't love the hills so much. It's really hilly area, and and then
Really,
LA
really
to
good for your butt.
yeah. It is good for your butt. You don't have to like set aside a designated working out time. So that's easy. All settled. But yeah. So thank you so much for sharing with me about New York. I feel like I have a bit of a better understanding of how it works now, but still very hard to imagine. I will have to go there to check it out for myself. So now, before we get too far into the New York conversation and take up like half of the time talking about New York, let's move on to the interview section. And my first question for you is, what is a relationship? How would you describe a relationship?
I would describe a relationship as a active partnership where you are doing the verb relate to relate. So it is an active experience. It's not just two people in a room or two people decide to be in a relationship. If you're not relating to each other, there is no relationship.
So, with that in mind, in your opinion, does a relationship, especially a romantic one, still hold the same meaning, structure, and importance as decades ago?
No, it doesn't. Because decades ago, a woman was required to be married to even have a credit card.
Right.
So,
Out of utility. Yeah.
yeah. And then even before that, there were more, requirements attached to being married, or requirements of being married in order to be accepted in society. Even being in a partnership was not the same as being married. I know there are places where people still have that point of view today, but yeah, no, it's very different. I think today there's a lot more opportunity to focus on relationships as a catalyst for self-actualization, which is mainly work that I do.
Yeah. And in today's context, how would you define shared responsibility?
I would say you have a shared responsibility to your partner, not for your partner, but to your partner, to show up as much as possible with curiosity about yourself and about them, and allow yourself to know a new person potentially every day, every month, every year, and be open to what you can learn and what you can offer, versus having some sort of rigid idea of how something is going to be and always going to be.
And what are some examples of sharing responsibilities in a relationship?
Well, one example is I put away the dishes and my husband puts the dishes in the dishwasher. So we have two different roles when it comes to the dishwasher. So that's a funny example of how partners can complement each other in different ways. But really, being aware that you are taking up a main starring role in another person's life for a very short period of time. A life is a very short time. And you really impact them and their journey and their sense of self and what they're able to evolve towards in their life. And I really support my clients to take that responsibility seriously.
So, is sharing responsibility in a relationship equivalent at all to dividing work 50-50?
Well, the dishwasher example is more of a 50-50, but I think each person bringing 100% is a better outlook.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And how does bearing that shared responsibility affect a relationship and parties within it?
And parties within it.
Yeah, like the
You
people
mean?
in the relationship.
Well, a big part of a particular point of view of why we are attracted to who we are attracted to is the idea that we're meeting somebody who has a similar makeup to what we perceive our original caregivers to have, and potentially the appearance of those same shortcomings, which then trigger those wounds, but then with the opportunity to move through that together and heal that. So that would really be the opportunity that exists. And the impact of that on each person is growing in their sense of trust and love and acceptance.
Now, you mentioned before that a huge misconception with sharing responsibilities in a relationship is that people think it's about compromise. What would be a better way of looking at this?
To go deeper in what each person is feeling around whatever their suggestion is or whatever their need is. So, for example, if somebody is vegan and says, I want to, go out for dinner, where do you want to go? And that person suggests a place that is not particularly vegan. The vegan person might feel they have to compromise. But if the person who is non-vegan says, I really want to go to this restaurant, and even though it's not vegan, it's only available, there's only a reservation on this day, the vegan person might then say, I'm okay finding something that I can eat because I want to support this opportunity for you. So it's the context and that piece of information that could be the paradigm shift.
Yeah, I like the way you said, instead of compromise, it's more of like, I'm okay to support this opportunity for you. I feel like
that ideally feels good for the partner.
Yeah.
So it changes from, I don't want to do this to, something I do want to do because I understand the meaning behind it.
Yeah. And are there any challenges in shifting this mindset when, trying to veer away from that compromise kind of outlook? Is this something that you've seen your clients struggle with?
Yeah, I think that's very much where people come to a therapist to help each person in a non-judgmental way go deeper in themselves for themselves and for the other person to discover what's really going on.
That's really interesting. So how does that usually pan out? What are some of the common things that people struggle with when trying to change that mindset?
Oh, it depends what it is. I'm thinking of a particular couple that I worked with, and the wife was a former athlete. And so she was really, really into food and food prep and all of those things. And so she was the main contributor on that. And it's not that she wouldn't ask him to do things or ask him to help sometimes, and he would, but she felt like if she didn't do it, it wouldn't get done in the way that she's passionate about. And she knew that he appreciates that she's passionate about that and has gotten on board with that type of eating. And she enjoyed doing it, but she still felt resentful. So we just shifted everything and gave her a break and had her do some self-care during dinner prep time for 2 weeks. And he was in charge of dinner for 2 weeks, which he had never done from beginning to end. And he found an appreciation for that and definitely an understanding of how much it takes for her to do that. And that was really the shift, is that he didn't realize how much it took, even though he could verbally say that. He was able afterwards to really understand and appreciate at a different level. And she felt that. And it kind of just neutralized anything around the food stuff, which had been something they were arguing about for years.
That's incredible. That's I feel like that's very similar to like some sitcoms have this one episode, especially with families, where they will switch roles. The parents will switch roles because they'll be arguing about something, being like, I do this and you're not grateful enough for this. Like, you can't do my job. You will never be able to do my job as well as I do. And then they switch roles. I think this happened in Modern Family, where they switched roles and a lot of things went wrong. They needed their kids to help them. They bribed their kids to help them, which obviously I don't know if this is actually going to happen in real life. Surely it does with some family out there. But yeah, they bribed their kids to help them. Then they realized how intense and how difficult the other person's job was and started to feel more grateful for it. So it's really interesting to see that play out in real life, but with less intensity.
Gratitude and appreciation are a really big thing and can cause a lot of issues. And sometimes couples will argue or fight about something, and that's really what's underneath.
So this might be the wrong takeaway, but what I'm hearing is that if we don't feel like we are appreciating each other enough, we should try switching roles for a bit?
Um, that is an option, although there are sometimes roles that can't be switched. And understanding, or asking what would it look like, or how would you know if your partner did appreciate you, is a different avenue into understanding what behaviors could be
Yeah.
implemented as a homework in the way you're describing.
Yeah. Well, are there any other practices that couples can implement apart from that switching roles, in an effort to understand each other's responsibilities a bit better?
Yeah, I mean, asking questions like what is it like for you? What is it like for you to be a father? What is it like for you to be a mother? What is it like for you to be the breadwinner? What is it like for you to be in whatever situation you're in? Uh, Asking
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
sounds like just honestly exercising a lot of empathy towards your partner, which, regardless of responsibility being, heavy or anything like that, should be something that we do from the get go. But sometimes it's hard when you're in a long-term relationship sometimes you forget to exercise that when you've had that there all along and for a really long time, I guess. So is there a habit that you think that couples in that situation could practice?
Yeah, I would say couch time, just having like 20 minutes of couch time, an hour of couch time, whatever you can do, ideally every day, if not at least once a week for sure, where you just sit with each other and you're present and you share, you take turns kind of sharing just whatever's going on or whatever's coming up.
And how do you think embracing the shared responsibility in a relationship can help with both of the individual's personal growth?
I mean, when you feel like somebody has your back, that's like a life-changing feeling.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
having somebody's back at the deepest level, I think, is the ideal. And that starts with curiosity. And then between the curiosity and the feeling of being supported is the whole journey.
Yeah. I also just imagine that if one person starts doing it and the other person realizes and feels that, and, it feels very heartwarming, and then they also try to reciprocate that same empathy, and exercising that really does wonders for your introspection as well, because you have to reflect a lot in order to exercise that empathy. You've got to reflect on the kind of questions you want to ask. You've got to reflect on what someone else's experience might be and how you would fare in that situation. So yeah, it sounds like it's a great journey, not just for the relationship, but for self-improvement as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of the whole point.
Well, does sharing responsibility in a relationship also help with minimizing conflict at all? Or does it does it bring about more opportunity for conflict?
Well, I think that the best answer for that at a high level is if a system, a relationship is a system, and if a system can look at anything that's happening to the system is happening to the system. It doesn't matter if it's happening to one part of the system, it's still the system. And when two people are really in it in that way, it's not that conflict can't happen, but even when conflict happens, the goal is still to work through the conflict together to get to the shared goal together.
Yeah. It sounds like conflict resolution, if anything, strengthens the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not necessarily a bad thing to have some conflict, as long as you learn how to resolve it as a couple, which
Mm-hmm.
then it feels like teamwork too. But do you have any last pieces of advice or words of wisdom for our listeners who are interested in embracing that shared responsibility in their relationship?
I would say to ask your partner what they expect of you in life and in the partnership, and to always ask in whatever way you can, if you don't want to use these words, how can I love you more and better?
And I imagine this is something that would have to be brought up every now and then. So, at what frequency would you recommend this being a topic of conversation?
Whenever you want.
Good answer. Whenever you want. Well, how often do your clients usually do it?
Well, if they're seeing me weekly, then they're doing it weekly.
Yeah. Well, I can't even think about doing it weekly. I mean, like, that sounds like a lot of mental effort to do weekly, but at the same time, when you are in a partnership with someone, it does require that amount, that caliber of effort. And at some point, I just imagine it to kind of be second nature. To yeah, it's like learning how to ride a bike, right?
Yeah, so that's what happens is when you work with a couples therapist, especially when there's like a consistent cadence, then you're doing something because the therapist is helping to facilitate that and hold the space for that. You're not watching TV, you're not doing
Yeah.
something else. You're
Yeah.
kind of a captive audience to a process, to someone that's helping to go there with you. And then if it feels good, you're going to do it more. And so eventually the combination of it being something familiar and a muscle plus it feeling good just makes that.
Yeah, I will say personally that a therapist really, really helps with like just keeping accountability. Sometimes you try to do this as a couple on your own and you get distracted by other things like, oh, we've got to watch this movie or we've got to do something else. And then you completely forgot about that conversation that you need to have. So therapy every week is a good idea. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And now we're moving on to the practice/habits section. And this is where we ask you some questions about the everyday application of what you've just shared with us. The first question is, what is a habit that you recommend practicing to encourage and empower a romantic partner when sharing responsibilities? And I am aware you've already mentioned couch time. You've already mentioned the conversation and stuff like that. But is there another habit that you have in mind?
Having touch points, what I call touch points, or maybe what other people call touch points, I'm not sure. But that means before you leave or when you come home or before you go to sleep, you kiss hello, kiss goodbye, kiss goodnight, no matter what.
That's sweet.
So
yeah.
It's a moment of connection. It's knowing there's kind of an anchor. There's going to be a moment where you connect.
Yeah.
And it's intentional and it starts to build on itself, because if somebody's really stressed and they have to go do stuff, but they come in, they give you a kiss, you have that moment, they say, I really got to go do this stuff.
Yeah.
You know that you had that moment. Yeah. And I think that goes a really long way.
Yeah. Can you elaborate on how having that anchor point helps to support the shared responsibilities and the relationship?
Yeah, because in a way, it's an unspoken understanding that I get you, you come first, you're a priority. I can give you context to why I need to go do something else. But our connection is constantly being watered and is being focused on. And, you don't go hours or days forgetting it. It's that's there. And even if there's an argument, it's like, okay, but this person came and gave me a kiss. Hello. I know we're going to work it out. I know we're still here.
It's kind of like a non-verbal gesture that there's still love and support there, no matter what. So that sounds great to practice too. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Now we're moving on to the open mic section, and this is your chance to talk about anything at all that you're passionate about, and it doesn't have to be related to the topic. But if it is, feel free to go ahead and yammer on about shared responsibility. We love to receive any other bits of information from you if you want to share them. So yeah, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Okay. Well, there a couple of different things come to mind. One is something very important is it's completely normal and okay to schedule sex dates. And the idea that at some point sex isn't spontaneous in the way that it was does not mean anything is wrong. You can still schedule spontaneity. You can still schedule time, because really when you're first dating, you are scheduling sex, right? Or you're scheduling a bunch of hours where you're going to do a bunch of activities and probably like have sex. And so the idea that you can't still do that and create that space is false. The other thing that I think is important around that is, just like if you want to go swimming and the water is cold, but you still want to go swimming and you know in the end it'll be good, and you start just by putting one foot in the water or going down the steps and like until your body warms up and then you get in and then it's like not even cold. It's very similar. You can schedule sex. You could not even think you're into it. You can just take each step, and then, you know, at some point you're connected to that. I think that's something that's really important, because a lot of people don't understand that in itself is something to water as well, for so many reasons. There's so many health benefits, hormonal benefits, connective benefits. And I'm, speaking about just regular relationships where there isn't any particular presenting issue sexually. But yeah.
And to your first point, I think also that, well, when you first start dating, you don't really talk about when you're going to have sex, because you've just started dating and neither parties want to pressure each other into having sex, right? So but there's still this implication there that, like, there could be a chance for it. Whereas when you've already dated each other for long enough, you start to be more open about these things. You talk about sex more. You already know each other's wants and needs. You already are very familiar with each other's schedules, so it makes more sense to schedule sex. But yeah, like you said, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't mean that it's mundane. It can still be spontaneous. You're just talking about a set time. So that's really interesting that you bring that up, because spontaneity doesn't have to be just about the time. And to your second point, which was, I'm sorry, what was it? The water thing. Putting your feet in the cold water. To take things to a literal, maybe far too literal, but I always have a good time, after I just, like, push myself into the cold water. Never regret it. So sometimes that's just how it is. It's frightening at first. It's a bit too cold at first, but you warm up. So yeah, was there anything else you'd like to add to that?
Well, on a totally separate note, I'm in the process of getting certified in psychedelic assisted psychotherapy.
Oh,
so
congratulations.
Thank you. I'm very passionate about ketamine. I just became ketamine assisted psychotherapist. So something I think that can really help couples is psychedelic work for sure. Right now in the States, at least, except for in Oregon and maybe one other state, ketamine is the only kind of psychedelic compound that is legal. And I think that working with ketamine, even one partner, but potentially having ketamine be a part of a couple's process, can really open a lot and get through a lot of blocks. And I'm just really excited to see where this field is going. And if your listeners are open to something, if they feel like they've been stuck for a really long time in a certain way, or have even been to couples therapy, looking into psychedelic assisted couples therapy, if that's even available there, I don't know, is something that, would be cool.
That's really interesting. I don't know much about psychedelic assistance. So could you tell us more about how ketamine can be a benefit in these situations?
Yeah. So similar to other like the classic psychedelics, it stops what's called the default mode network in your brain. So kind of the automatic way that your brain operates just on its own from life, it literally shuts that off and then lights up all these other parts of your brain at the same time so they can talk to each other really fast. And you can gain insights and see things and dissolve ideas or beliefs or blocks from your own inner wisdom facilitated by ketamine, by that molecule. But it's actually your own inner intelligence that's bringing that up. And when you have two people or a couple or people in a relationship, I also see people who are in thruples and, polyamorous relationships. But when you do that with a partner, not necessarily at the same time, but when you're both doing that work, it can really speed up a lot of the limitation or misunderstanding. Hasn't found it out. Yeah.
That sounds incredible. And what do you see in the future of using ketamine in therapy?
Well, it's being used everywhere in New York, at least, definitely in New York City. And it's being used in different ways, particularly the psychedelic model, where it's at a psychedelic dose, I think is enhancing relationships and even friendships. Group work is being done with ketamine. So being open to transcend your mind with another at minimum, I think, is the direction that ketamine is going. It is being used therapeutically to treat so many things, and it is also being used specifically for the journey, for the personal growth, the self-exploration. So all of the above.
That sounds incredible. I hope that it spreads to hopefully to Australia. I don't think we have this legalized in Australia yet, but I'm not sure. I've never really looked up ketamine for like in therapeutic uses yet. But yeah, hopefully it catches on to other parts of the world as well. It sounds like a huge benefit. And thank you so much for sharing that with us and for joining us today. If our listeners want to find out more about you and what you do, where can they go?
My website, Shira Etzion, MFT.com.
Amazing. We'll link your website in the show notes below. And thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll catch you in the next episode. You've been listening to Reloscope, the Relationship Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. For more episodes like this from 10 different life management perspectives, search LMSL on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts so you can get updated on everything we have to offer. We have a wide range of topics readily available for you to check out. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel as it helps us grow and bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website at re.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Marie Stella. Thanks for tuning in.